You're listening to the Adventure Sports Podcast. We talk with adventurers from around the globe to bring you the inspiration and motivation you need to get started in the outdoors or to keep you moving if you're already there. Now here's your host, Kurt Linville.
Hey, all you Adventure Sports Podcast friends. I have one of my very favorite people on the entire planet to interview today, and I am super excited about it. This gal, I've known her for several years, and it turns out she told me just today that she had never been on the Adventure Sports Podcast, which is almost true, and we decided that it was time because she has something very, very special to share. If you are the type of person who loves adventure but has a hard time finding the energy for adventure, or maybe you would love adventure but anxiety kind of scares you away from it, you just feel like it would be too overwhelming. Or maybe you're someone that suffered from allergies or asthma or other things that have kind of held you back. Well, this is an episode that's designed for you, and it's one that you're going to want to share with people who might be in a similar situation. So that is today's topic, health ideas that can help you in adventure. And this wonderful person that I am interviewing is actually my daughter, Lydia Laskanik. Welcome to the program.
Yoo-hoo! Thanks for having me, Dad. I'm glad to be here.
My sons, maybe all of them, I'm not sure if Luke's been on or not, but my sons have been on over the years here and there when we did a big adventure, and it's pretty rare. But Lydia has not been on, and there's a good reason for it. She didn't go on the big adventure. Now, she did go on adventures, but I want to tell you one story that will kind of set the context. Lydia always chose to do adventurous things with friends. She loves to be with people, and it was more about the people that were going than it was about the adventure itself. And so we planned a trip. I guess we're going into Mammoth Basin in front of James Peak in Colorado backpacking, and some of her friends came along, and we had a delightful time, but it was a really steep, challenging hike out of there. And on the way up, she had an asthma attack that made it very, very, very hard to breathe. It was very, very scary, and she made it out just fine. But that's just an example of some of the challenges that has kept Lydia from having all the adventures with the guys over the years. And it's probably the number one reason she's not been on the podcast. But she has been researching health and finding ways to overcome health challenges that inhibit adventure. Not only that, but Lydia has a pre-med degree, so she studied information that helped her in her pursuit of her own personal health, and she has come up with ideas and experiences that might be helpful to you. This is not medical advice. None of it has anything to do with medical advice, but we're going to share Lydia's journey toward health and how her world of adventure is enlarging. So, Lydia, did I get all that right?
Yep, that's a really good summary. And I think that, I hadn't quite realized how much of, my exercise-induced asthma or my anxiety that I have been fighting for my entire life has really kept me from doing a lot of adventures up until recently when I was thinking back about everything that I missed out on and all of the cool stories that you guys had that I just wasn't a part of because I just was too afraid of having a panic attack in the woods, or just having an asthma attack that was, going to be so bad to the point where I just coughing up blood all the time. But for you asthma attack people out there, you know what I'm talking about. The little blood vessels in your lungs actually just break open and you're coughing up blood, and it doesn't make the backpacking as fun when that's going on.
Right. Well, there's hope. And that's the reason that I wanted to have Lydia on today. She has been pursuing her own health journey, and she's learned an awful lot. And it doesn't mean that this is what's going on with you, but there are indications that this is going on with a lot of people. So I don't think that Lydia's story is unique, and I think it's one that may be very, very helpful. One thing that our family discovered over the years, we appreciate doctors and modern medicine very, very much. And they're very, very helpful. But there are some things that modern medicine kind of treats the symptoms of and doesn't have a good grip yet on what the causes may be that could turn lives around. And for all of our kids, raising our family with 4 kids, my wife and I explored a lot of things like, well, what could be causing this? What could be causing that? And we would find something that would literally change one of our kids' lives. And it's not a medical solution usually. It's more of a natural solution. It's like, I'm a unique person, and as a unique person, this is my thing that I got to watch out for. So that's the journey that Lydia's been on. And she is now, how old are you, Lydia? Are you willing to say?
I'm almost 27.
Almost 27 years old. So this has been a pretty long journey, especially growing up in a household that was very, very adventurous. And it has held Lydia back. But she is beginning to find some answers that are very, very hopeful. And that's what we want to share with you. Before we dive into that, though, Lydia, I would like for people to know what your adventures have been, because you are an adventurous person. So give us a short adventure resume.
Yeah, well, I would say I fell in love with rock climbing. I did rock climbing for several years. I got really, really into it in high school, especially, where I would do indoor and outdoor rock climbing about 5 or 6 days a week, especially my junior and senior year of high school. I loved it so much because, if I know a lot of you out there, you probably have a pretty loud brain, and rock climbing is one of those things where you just have to concentrate and you have to just put all of your mental energy towards figuring out the problem on the wall or whatever you're climbing. So I really, really enjoyed rock climbing for a lot of years until I tore a ligament in my spine in a rock climbing accident. Whoops, shouldn't have done that.
Oops.
And I've also really enjoyed skiing throughout the years. Just trying to hang with the guys on the ski slope has been a good time for me as well when I've been able to do that. I've done a little bit of backpacking as well. And I really just love being out in nature in general. There are so many amazing health benefits of being out in nature. It essentially resets your nervous system, especially if you're walking around barefoot. It can reset your parasympathetic nervous system and just bring you out of that fight or flight and just into peace and calm. And so even though, I might not be going out and doing extreme adventures, even just walking around barefoot or putting my toes in an ice cold stream has been just such a renewing and relaxing experience every time I've done that. And I feel so lucky to have grown up in the mountains and the woods, where I just now feel like the mountains are a part of me. They're just, mountains and Lydia is kind of synonymous terms. I've never felt more at home than just walking around barefoot in the woods.
I'm going to throw a couple more in. Lydia graduated from an outdoor leadership program where she learned how to lead groups in the woods and learned all the things like wilderness first aid and survival skills and camping skills and backpacking skills. And that was something she did as part of her education program. And Lydia has also summited a couple of 14ers. And that might be one example of something that health challenges kind of kept Lydia from doing as much of. My sons, some of them have been up 20-something 14ers by now, and we did a lot of 14er trips, and Lydia was like, yeah, no thanks. We'll see you guys when you get home.
I've done 2.
But that's awesome. You did do it. The experience, but you also found out what exercise-induced asthma does to a person on a 14er.
Yeah, that's a special one.
Yeah, and so I think the point is Lydia can be sympathetic with health challenges. I would encourage anyone, no matter what their challenge is, to consider ways to work with it and overcome it and do adventure on the level that is safe and that is appropriate for you, and see if you can grow beyond your current limitations. And that kind of brings us to where Lydia is. So our family, I'm gonna preface it this way. Our family seems to be susceptible to a lot of strange allergies. And when I found out that I was gluten intolerant, it changed my life. I don't want to give too much information, but I had been sick for many, many years. And I was diagnosed by a doctor before being gluten intolerant was a popular thing. When no one knew what it was, that's when I was diagnosed. And when I managed to get gluten out of my diet, I cut my food intake by 2/3 and I gained 30 pounds. If that doesn't make sense, think about it. I wasn't digesting my food. So regretfully, it is genetic. And so Lydia inherited gluten sensitivities, as did other people in my family. And it kind of went from there. So Lydia, will you share with us kind of your health journey with allergies and sensitivities and what that's done to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I found out that I was gluten intolerant around the same time you did. Like within a couple of weeks of each other, we found it out, and I think I was 9 at the time. And, back then just everything made me feel sick. And I think I was probably a little bit underweight just because I didn't want to eat, because every time I ate, it just made me feel sick. And I also have struggled a lot with anxiety my entire life. And interestingly enough, my allergies have gotten a lot worse over the years and not better. And we'll dive a lot more into why that is. But essentially why I wanted to come on this podcast was just to say, not to talk about all of these crazy health issues that I've been so stubbornly fighting my whole life, but I wanted to come on and just say, hey, here's what's been happening in my life, and here's my aha moment, so that if other people have been struggling with anxiety or food intolerance or histamine intolerance or mast cell activation syndrome or heart palpitations or exercise-induced asthma, any of these things, or if you've been getting more and more food sensitivities that you didn't have in the past, and you're just wondering, what the heck is going on with me? Why is this happening? That's why I wanted to get on here, because I have some good news for you.
Well, that's exciting. And I don't know how many people who just don't feel like they can adventure listen to the Adventure Sports Podcast. Hopefully, many do, because they want to adventure, even if they're not able to. But I know that people that listen to this podcast know people that are in that situation. And I would say also, if you are a big adventurer and you just don't understand why some people just don't do it, you can't talk them into it, that kind of thing, it could be very much related to this type of a scenario. So I'm encouraging you, as you listen to this podcast, think about other people that it might encourage or help. And let's move forward. So Lydia, it's kind of hard to dive in because there are a lot of things that we could address. But if people find some of the symptoms that you've just explained, right, and including general severe fatigue, that was one you didn't talk about, but it's very, very real.
Yeah.
Then what are some of your ideas, things that you've discovered that are helping you? I mean, you've been to the doctors. You've been to the naturopath doctors, you've been to the MDs, you've been to, allergy specialists, everybody you've been to, man. So you've learned from them and they've been very helpful, but you've also had to explore things on your own. Just lay some of it out for us. Yeah,
absolutely. So the first thing that I wanted to dive into is gluten intolerance, because that's something that so many people struggle with. The main reason that most of us have gluten intolerance is because we don't have enough of the enzyme in our pancreas that actually digests the gluten protein. Modern day wheat has about 100 times the amount of the gluten protein that it did that our grandmothers ate. So it's a different wheat, right? It's been genetically modified, and that has just caused a lot of people to become sick. And in addition to that, they're also using glyphosate on many of these wheat farms. And glyphosate is also known as Roundup. They're spraying that on, and that is something that makes the wheat even harder to digest for a lot of people. So that's why the gluten intolerance has become more and more prevalent. But there's also another reason why gluten intolerance has become more and more prevalent, and I'll get into that later. So that is one of the things that I really wanted to talk about. That's just the why of why we have that gluten intolerance. Gluten intolerance can really affect your gut microbiome. It can affect your gut-brain axis. It can lead to a whole host of issues like IBS and chronic fatigue and headaches and brain fog. And so it's a really important thing that if you start to have some of those symptoms that, you maybe pull out gluten. And oftentimes gluten and dairy are hand in hand with allergies. So a lot of times people will pull both of those things out of their diet until they can heal their gut, and then they can usually reintroduce dairy back in. Again, using the right kind of dairy is also really important. So using dairy that's A2, low temp, vat pasteurized milk is also generally really, really good for that. So just wanted to talk a little bit about the gluten intolerance because it kind of ties in with this really much bigger issue that we'll go into later about why so many people are struggling with this, as well as so many other things, and why it seems to be getting so much worse instead of better.
I want to point out that, I was careful to say I was diagnosed before being allergic to gluten was popularized. And I say that because it kind of did become a fad. And actually, everyone that I've talked to that went on to a no gluten diet did benefit. And I think that's because as a society, we just have far too much gluten in our diet now. Even people that aren't really, that gluten sensitive still benefit because gluten is a stressor to the body, right? But that was kind of the popularity side of it. And I know it got politicized around the time that it kind of became a thing in the social awareness. I want to point out that for people that are really gluten sensitive, it's real. And if you're beyond gluten sensitive, you might be someone that suffers from celiac disease. Celiac disease can be lethal, and that's an extreme form of gluten intolerance, and it's a very real thing. So for those of you out there that are saying, oh, gluten, everyone's talking about gluten. Well, for some people, it's a very real thing, and it's worthwhile to get tested to find out what your gluten sensitivity really is. So I would suggest maybe finding a good naturopathic doctor, or maybe a functional medicine doctor, or someone who's just open to exploring these things with you and get medical advice. But let's keep going, Lyd. So gluten was the first one that you mentioned was a big one, and you said it's often tied into dairy. Here's our theory. We're not medical people. We're not allergists, but our theory is when your body is having strong histamine or allergic reactions to something, then it becomes ultra sensitive to everything else that could, be a possible allergen. So if you can find out what the big one is, sometimes it allows you to manage the smaller ones once you take care of the big one. That's what you were talking about with dairy, right? That it became something that you can reintroduce once you solve the bigger issue of gluten.
Right. Yep, absolutely. And the other thing too is, our grandmothers, they didn't have this super white shelf stable flour. They actually had the whole entire wheat kernel. And that comes with a lot of the micronutrients that you get. You actually get 27 out of 30 of all of the amino acids that you need just through having true wheat. So what a lot of people have found is actually just milling their own wheat right before they bake with it, like within 24 hours. Otherwise, it starts to spoil and go bad. Then they do get a lot of the micronutrients and a lot of those vitamins that you need. And they're buying ancient grain. They're buying the unhybridized, non-genetically modified wheat that still has that really low gluten content. And that's called einkorn wheat. That's EINKORN wheat. So that's another option too that you can try, as well as just using that wheat with a homemade sourdough starter. So if you think that you're gluten intolerant or you're just not really handling the artificial almost flour that we have that's, had cheap vitamins put back in it to try to make it somewhat healthy. If you try the einkorn ancient grain wheat and you're milling it at home yourself, you're using it within 24 hours, and you're also using a homemade sourdough starter, that could also be amazing for your health. That might be the only thing that you need to do.
Interesting. I'm going to throw something out there that I heard on another podcast a few years ago, and I guess it makes it hearsay because I can't quote the source, but it's worth looking into because my understanding is that it's valid. When they first started making white flour, where they were actually getting rid of most of the kernel and just hanging on to primarily the starches in the flour, and then they would be bleaching it out, and it made the most beautiful white breads and fancy cookies and pastries and all this sort of thing. But in their early testing, they found out that it was actually deadly. They tested it on animals. They would feed them a white flour diet, and the animals would start dying. They developed all sorts of diseases that were not related to gluten necessarily. They were related to malnutrition because they had stripped so many of the vitamins and minerals that are necessary, that are essential, out of the flour. And so if you go to the store and you pick up a bag of white flour and read on it, it'll say fortified with, and it'll give you a long list of vitamins. The reason it's fortified with these artificial vitamins is because it's actually very, very unhealthy if you have white flour that doesn't have artificial vitamins put back into it. So that's just one example of how our modern food has developed. And there's something to be said for getting back to foods that are in their original natural form, because that's what humans thrived on for millennia, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And another interesting food-related thing while we're on this topic that I wanted to quickly talk about is seed oils. I know that that's a huge buzzword these days, but
yeah, it's the latest popular thing.
Yeah, buzzword for a reason. So my husband and I actually experimented with this when we spent a month in Costa Rica. There is a lot of research that shows that seed oils are actually what is causing the modern day sunburn. So if you have seed oils in your body, it's causing an inflammatory response, and that also inhibits the melanin production in your skin, which is essentially what causes you to be okay with being in the sunshine without getting a sunburn.
It's a tan.
Yes. Melanin is a tan. The more melanin that you naturally have in your skin, the darker your skin is. And so oh man, that's so fascinating. So we thought, well, we're here in Costa Rica for a month. We might as well try it. And we actually experienced that if we weren't eating seed oils and we had our sunglasses off, which is another thing tied to melanin production, that we actually got a natural tan and we didn't burn. Me having some Cherokee and Choctaw in me, as well as Irish, I get red in the sun. I don't tan, I just get red. So for me to actually get a little bit tan instead of red was a huge thing for me. So now whenever I'm going out into the sun, I don't wear sunglasses. And I know, some people say that causes glaucoma and a whole host of other issues, but you just don't want to overdo it in the sun, right? Maybe if I'm up at a really high elevation, I will wear sunglasses, I'll wear sunscreen, I'll wear clothes that cover my skin so that my skin isn't being exposed to the really harsh UV. But when I'm, in Denver or in like sea level especially, if you're not eating seed oils and you're keeping your sunglasses off, then your skin will naturally produce the melanin that it needs to protect yourself from getting skin cancer. So it's another really interesting aspect of seed oils that not a lot of people know about.
That's fascinating. And that's not one that I've ever tested. But one thing that I did hear a sun specialist talking about, and it's one of the approaches to sun. I'm not going to say it's the only one, but I liked it because I love nature. The idea was that if you put on a bunch of sunscreen and lather up with all this stuff, it allows you to stay in the sun way too long. And by not using the sunscreens, then you start to feel like I'm getting some sun and you find some shade. And that actually allows your body to keep up with building the tan that you need so that you don't have the big extreme sunburns and that sort of thing. But the other problem is if you're using sunscreens, you can actually be exposed to damaging sun rays without getting a burn, because you're protecting yourself from getting the burn, but it's not protecting you from overdoing it in the sun in other ways. So anyway, I just found that interesting. Now, if you combine that with the seed oil thing that Lydia was just talking about, then it kind of changes our perspective. You know, humans have been living in the sun, again, countless millennia, and we tolerated it. But what changed? That's the question. Why is it that as humans, we don't tolerate it as well now? Now, people could say, well, the ozone layer is not the same and all that kind of stuff. Everything comes into play. I'm not an expert. I'm just saying maybe there's a natural reason, and maybe seed oils are a part of it.
Yeah, it could very well be.
What do seed oils do to the body that you would say is unhealthy? I mean, why should people be worried about it?
Well, seed oils just do a lot of really negative things to your body. They are really bad for your stomach lining. So they cause a whole host of issues. A lot of people, there's a lot of research out there that says a lot of different things. So you'll probably have to do your own research. It's been a while since I looked at the specific ill effects of seed oils, because I just did a lot of research on it and I said, you know what, seed oil is bad. I'm going to avoid those. And I felt a lot better. So they can lead to leaky gut, which is essentially abrasions in your intestines that allow all of the waste to get out into your body. So that's a really negative thing, because your body's just working extra hard to be a cleanup crew, and it can cause a lot of stomach issues. It can also cause brain fog, and it can cause a lot of these chronic conditions. And a lot of people even think that it leads to different types of dementia like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. So it's really just not the best thing for you. But again, a lot of these new oils that people have been using instead of seed oils, they're not, they don't have quite as high of a smoke point as seed oils do. So that's another thing to keep in mind as well, that you really want to make sure that the oil that you are replacing a seed oil with has a smoke point that will be within the temperature range that you're cooking in. So you don't want to use like olive oil, for instance, when you're cooking at 400 degrees or high temperature cooking. A lot of times I'll use ghee. Ghee is really good. It's a type of butter, essentially. It's just processed in a specific way to allow for high heat. And you can still use olive oil or different oils just at a lower temperature, or just on salads and things like that. And that's when it becomes really good for you. But they're also finding that you can use up to 30% of seed oils and things like olive oil and avocado oil without it affecting the taste. And even though that's illegal in the US, there's actually a black market with olive oil. So that's another thing to check too, is just making sure that your olive oil coming from a single origin, that you can actually trace the manufacturing of that, because they are finding a lot of undisclosed seed oils in 100% pure extra virgin olive oil.
Great. So one thing that we learned many years ago when we were raising our family is that hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated oils, this is old stuff, PSHOs, people talked about this a decade ago. But what was happening is that the hydrogenated oils block your body's absorption of essential fatty acids, the oils that your body needs to be healthy. And it does cause all sorts of brain challenges, emotional challenges, mood issues, the ability to think sharply, that kind of thing. If you take a low temperature oil like olive oil and you heat it up too hot, you hydrogenate it. And now you've got a problem because you're taking hydrogenated oils. So it's not just hydrogenated oils. It's also seed oils. If you want to learn more about it, I would encourage you to go online and look at the details about how seed oils are manufactured. And then more modern testing is showing that the end results are of ingesting these seed oils. It's kind of scary. I was really disappointed because I love things like tortilla chips, right? And it's just hard to find those sorts of things that aren't cooked in canola oil or vegetable oils or cottonseed oil. All these oils are the seed oils we're talking about that do the damage. So look into it for yourself. Don't take our word for it, right? Don't take our word for it. Have you ever gone through all the hassles of getting on the plane, security, luggage, long waits at the airport, all that kind of stuff, and then when you finally arrive at your destination, not only are you worn out, but you also might feel a little bit disconnected. I know that I do when I hopscotch around the planet on a plane. That's one of the reasons why I love the great American road trips, where you get to drive from one place to another and connect all of those dots. You get to experience the changes in the terrain and the weather and the people and the communities. This is one reason that I am excited to present to you our new sponsor, Outdoorsy. Outdoorsy offers a different way to travel. With Outdoorsy, you can rent an RV or a camper and turn the drive into part of the vacation on your schedule with your people and with way more flexibility. Listen, most trips focus on getting somewhere. Outdoorsy is about the part in between. With Outdoorsy, you can rent an RV or a camper and travel on your own terms. No TSA lines, no strict schedules, no rushing through airports. And for extra convenience, Outdoorsy even offers RV delivery and setup in many locations, so you can enjoy the experience without having to worry about the logistics. Outdoorsy connects travelers with trusted RV owners across the country, making it easy to find a rig that fits your style and budget, and I might add, that also fits with the people and the pets that you want to take with you. So when you're ready for a trip that actually feels like a break, head to Outdoorsy.com. Outdoorsy is currently running a special promotion for listeners. Use the promo code ASP at checkout to take advantage of this limited time offer. That's Outdoorsy.com, promo code ASP. What have been some of the good effects that you've noticed, besides not sunburning as easily? What are some of the good effects that you've noticed when you eliminated seed oils from your diet?
You know, I've really struggled with basically having a chronic upset stomach, and it's really helped me just to feel better in that regard and just not feel as sick all the time. There's, seed oil is just really, really hard for your body to digest. So just from a qualitative standpoint, if I eat a seed oil, it just feels really, really heavy in my stomach, and it just feels like, whatever food I just ate kind of sits like a rock in my stomach. And that'll happen a lot when I would go out to eat. So going seed oil free just helps me to digest the food better. And I feel like what I ate is actually working with my body, and my body just likes to digest it when it doesn't have seed oils in it. So that's helped a lot. But I think for a lot of people, it does help with their brain fog and chronic fatigue to avoid seed oils. For me, I have some other underlying health issues that I will talk about soon that I think will really benefit a lot of people to learn about. It is kind of keeping me from probably having the full effect of going seed oil free. So just for reference right now, before we get into all of the chronic stuff that I've been dealing with, that I finally think that I've unlocked the key to finally, after 6 years of truly trying to figure out what's been going on with my body for really my whole life.
Okay, so we've talked about gluten. We talked about how other allergies, especially things like dairy, can be very much related to your body just being so stressed by a primary allergen, in your case, which was gluten. We've talked about seed oils and how your health improved when you got away from seed oils. One example of that, everyone has experienced this. You have the food coma after lunch, and it's probably because you had the hamburger and the French fries, And the French fries, it's not the potatoes, folks. It's the oil they were fried in that does this to you. And so if you feel like you have a rock in your stomach and you need a nap, it's because your body is stressed. Your body's like, what did you just throw at me? You know, I need to lay down. So I think you might be surprised if you can avoid the seed oils, which is very, very hard to do because seed oils are ubiquitous in the American diet. This one takes a lot of effort. It really does to have a seed oil free diet, but try it, see what it does for you. Work with a medical practitioner who is well informed on these things. Don't take our word for it. Again, we're not giving medical advice. Let's go to the next one, Lydia. Some of the stuff that you've more recently discovered. So can we tell the story of your trip to France and how it almost didn't happen?
Yeah, absolutely. So my husband has this amazing group of college friends. They're just the best people that you'll ever meet. Most of them they've been an entrepreneur in some capacity, or they're just really forward thinkers, and they're just so intelligent. They're so fun. They're so kind. And every year they go on a ski trip together so they can actually see each other because they live scattered all over the US. And so last March, we were planning to go to Maribel, the Three Valleys, which is 3 different ski resorts in one. It's actually the largest ski resort in the world. And when you combine all of those 3, they have hundreds of lifts, and it's just an amazing spot to be. So for that past year, we had gotten married in August, so we had been married for about half a year. We had moved into this apartment that was a beautiful new apartment. It was built in like 2017. And when I moved in there, I really started struggling with panic attacks. And I would have 2 to 3 panic attacks a day. I remember one day I had a panic attack for about 5 hours. My husband, Matt, was gone for that day. He was at a business meeting a few hours away in another part of the state, and I just could not get my body to calm down. And all of these panic attacks that I've experienced are physiological. So it's nothing to do with what's going on in my brain. I'm not stressing myself out. One minute I'm thinking about puppies, and then the next minute I'm having a full-on physiological meltdown where my heart is skipping a beat. I feel so anxious, and a few times I literally thought that I was about to pass away because my heart just didn't seem like it was working appropriately, and I was scared to death. So you can imagine my trepidation when this France ski trip comes up, because I a lot of times get the physiological panic attacks from anything that peaks the adrenaline in my body. So taking a walk can even cause a panic attack, even with that very slight amount of adrenaline spike, which happens naturally every time we exercise. It's a really healthy thing to get that adrenaline spike. It's really good for your heart. It's a good, that's why cardio is so good. That adrenaline spike can be very good for you, and it can serve your body really well. But in my case, with this dysbiosis in my body, with something really wrong, every time I have a slight adrenaline spike, I get a physiological panic attack. And so we were going to go on this trip to France, and I was getting panic attacks like 2 or 3 times a day. I was throwing the kitchen sink at it to try to figure out what was going on with these panic attacks, because I just said, you know what, this is not me. I am not anxiety. I am not panic. I am peaceful, and I am stubbornly joyful, and I just want to get through this. I want to figure out what's causing this, and I want to get past it. And so I was just kind of attacking it from every single angle. I was like, is this adrenal fatigue? Is this a new food allergy? Is this a parasite? Is this some sort of other systemic issue that I hadn't found yet? I cut out alcohol out of my diet completely. I cut out caffeine out of my diet completely. I cut out any inflammatory food completely, and I was still having multiple panic attacks a day. And so I just didn't want to go on this trip to France. And so I was just terrified to go on this trip to France and to go on this adventure and to go skiing, because I knew that anything that increased my adrenaline, I would just get a panic attack. And so I called Dad, and he just said, you know what? You're going to regret it for the rest of your life if you don't go. So I ended up just doing it scared. I was in the airport, and we were in a lounge, and we were getting ready to hop on the airplane, and I got another panic attack out of nowhere when I was trying so hard to be peaceful. And I literally ran to the bathroom. I couldn't make it in time, almost. I was so close, and I just literally puked with the bathroom stall wide open with all these other women in the bathroom that were like, oh my goodness, what's happening? Because I was having this physiological reaction to whatever was in my body. And then, I got past it, and then we ended up getting on the plane, but I almost didn't get on the plane because I didn't know what was wrong with me. I didn't know why my heart was having these palpitations and why it was skipping these beats all the time. And I went skiing anyway in France. And I had a panic attack on the slopes a few times because, every time the adrenaline went up in my body, then it would cause a physiological panic attack. And I'm so stubborn. I just went and I did it anyway, knowing that I would have a panic attack. And at that point, it almost wasn't a big deal to me, even though in my body, I felt like I was about to pass away. In my brain, I knew I would be fine in like half an hour if I could just really feel it and, almost cause the panic attack to flood over my body. And then just get rid of that excess cortisol in my body, which is a stress hormone, also really good for you in moderate amounts. But if you have too much cortisol, it can cause anxiety and panic attacks and things like that. So that's the story of the trip to France.
Such an amazing opportunity, life experience that you almost missed. And even though you went, which I'm very proud of you for, it was really, really hard. And I want to say, I know Lydia very well. Lydia is an extraordinarily strong person. She's one of the strongest people I know. And so if you know someone that's suffering from panic attacks, don't think, well, they just don't have their act together. They're weak somehow. They're always scared of everything. People get agoraphobic because of this. Because they know if they have a panic attack when they're out and about, it's going to be very uncomfortable. They might cry uncontrollably. They might shake. They might even need to scream. They might throw up. They might have to rush to the ER because they feel like they're having a heart attack. And so you get to the point you don't ever want to leave home. Yeah,
it's a really scary feeling. My very worst, I was a little bit agoraphobic just because I didn't want to have a panic attack when I was driving because, in the back of my mind, I thought, what if this actually does become a heart attack because my body is so stressed out? And what if I'm driving and I have a panic attack and it turns into a heart attack and all of a sudden I'm, alone on a highway somewhere and, the worst happens. So
oh, goodness, yeah.
It really is just a really scary feeling. And for anybody out there that struggles with this, I just want you to know that you're not alone. And one of the wisest things I ever did was just not be afraid to tell the world about it and just say, hey, here's where I'm at. And, my husband's friends, which I do consider to be my good friends now, they actually witnessed me having a panic attack on the slope in Chamonix, which is another place that we went when we were in France. But that story was a little bit different. Do we have time for me to tell that story real quick?
You know what? I think that there's so much good information that you're going to share here in a moment. I do want to hear that story, but I'm going to just let everybody know. We're going to go ahead and let this podcast run long. I'm not going to stop at 55 minutes or an hour because I want to make sure that you get the encouragement that you need, because I think what Lydia has to share could change a lot of lives. So, yeah, Lydia, tell us what happened in Chamonix, but then I want us to transition into things that you have found that are really helping a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we were on the slopes in Chamonix, we had gotten about a 1.5 feet of snow that day. It had just absolutely dumped. It was one of those days where it had snowed for the entire 24 hours the day before, and then it was just a bluebird powder day. And for all you skiers and snowboarders out there, you know that that's about the best kind of skiing that there is, with the beautiful champagne powder and just a clear blue sky. And so we were skiing in Chamonix, and there was this little hut that we were trying to get to that you have to take the extremes to get to. You have to take a double black to go down there, and it was just a beautiful day. So we were skiing about halfway down the slope, and all of a sudden this really, really thick fog rolled in. And you know, if you've ever skied in Europe, you very much have to stay on piste. You have to stay on the exact ski route that they have you on, and it's marked by poles about every 10 feet. So you just have to stay on this very narrow spot there. So if you get off track, a lot of times you're going to get into avalanche territory, or you're just going to ski down to a spot where you're going to have to hike about 5 miles to get out. So when this really thick fog rolled in, it was hard to see where we were going. And so we were looking and looking for this hut where we were going to go get lunch. And then all of a sudden, the mountain started shaking under our feet. And we couldn't see where the avalanche was because we were in this really thick fog. And we just looked at each other and thought, are we going to die right now? Is there an avalanche above us? Because they're not always known for their avalanche mitigation in Europe, and we weren't sure if we were still on piste or if we were off piste at that point. And this avalanche rolled in, and our feet started shaking from underneath us, and then the sound finally stopped. And we realized later, once the fog had cleared and we were able to see what was going on, that it was actually an avalanche on the other side on a different mountain. But it was such a huge avalanche that we actually felt it on our mountain. And so that was a little bit anxiety-inducing.
I think that would be for anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was one of those things where I ended up having a panic attack right there in front of my husband's friend. And the reason I share that story is because it's okay to do it scared. It's okay to just go out there and live your best life and still have a panic attack in the middle of the ski run. And it's okay to let other people see you in that vulnerable state. Because my husband's friend, he's a really good friend of mine too, and he just said, you know what? You are the strongest person that I've ever met, because I couldn't imagine still being as joyful and as kind as you are and going through all of this stuff that you've been going through. And that's why I wanted to share it with you, because I've gotten a similar response to this with everybody that I've shared it with. And panic attacks and anxiety can be so isolating. And the best thing that you can do for yourself is just be vulnerable with people and share what's happening to you, because then it doesn't become as big of a monster.
Yeah, you pulled the teeth right out of that monster. But I have to highlight here, so many people would say, wait a minute. You're on a double black. You're in the fog so thick you can't see if you're on trail or off, and an avalanche is shaking the ground. Maybe that justifies a little bit of a panic attack. But it also goes to show that Lydia truly is adventurous. I mean, she's no stranger to double blacks and that kind of thing. I just want to point that out. So, Lydia, you've been finding some solutions, and they are related to health and diet and physiology. And I point that out because while some panic attacks might be treated by, mental health professionals, counselors, there are techniques that can help, at least to help you manage it. But it could be that this is actually your body doing this. It doesn't mean that you're a weak person, or that something's broken inside, right? And so, Lydia, will you share with us some of the things that have been providing breakthroughs for you now?
Yeah, absolutely. So something that I've been learning a lot about recently is how to calm your nervous system and how important that is for so many different aspects of health. And the main thing that has been really, really helpful for me with this, besides actually figuring out the health thing that I am working on detoxing from my body right now, which we'll get into in a minute, but your body can't really detox very well if it is in a fight or flight state, and it also can't digest very well. So if you're constantly in a state of fight or flight, meaning that you constantly have a lot of anxiety in your body, or you're just feeling like you're running on adrenaline, right? Your body's not going to be able to digest, and it's not going to be able to detox properly. So you end up holding a lot of toxins in your body because of that. And one of the things that is really helpful for many, many people, and that was helpful for me, is doing somatic therapy. Because somatic therapy just essentially tells your body in a very specific way, it's okay, you're safe. And it tells your nervous system to just chill out. And because of that, it puts you in your parasympathetic nervous system, so you're able to digest and you're able to detox, and all of the organs in your body are working as they should. And it actually helps with neuroinflammation as well, which a lot of times is what causes anxiety and panic attacks, is just inflammation in the body, in every single part of your body. There's just inflammation in your brain, there's inflammation in your gut especially. And so if you have inflammation in those two places, then a lot of times it can trigger, panic attacks and anxiety. So somatic therapy is very, very helpful, making sure that you have the right amount of iron in your system, especially if you're a woman. Having the right amount of iron and checking your ferritin levels is really, really important. The last thing that I want to say about this is magnesium, especially magnesium glycinate. Specifically, really, really good for your body, because magnesium is one of the first things that your body actually gets rid of when it's in a stressed state constantly, because magnesium is essentially, you can think of it as the mineral that calms your body down, or the element that calms your body down. So if you're really low in magnesium because you're constantly stressed, then that can kind of cause a positive feedback loop and cause you to get more anxiety. So taking magnesium, especially in the evening, is really, really good for sleep. And it's also really good for just keeping your body chill if you're going through a stressful season, or if you struggle with anxiety and panic attacks.
I want to highlight somatic therapy because that's a buzzword, and people are going to say, what is somatic therapy? I mean, people hear the word soma, and they might think about a drug from 1984 or Brave New World. I always get confused. But soma just means body, right? And somatic therapy are physical exercises you do that release the stress that's trapped in your body. And I have come to learn personally how trapped emotion in the body needs to be exercised out. And that's what somatic therapy does. So it's nothing fancy. All you do is lay on the floor and move in peaceful ways.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It really does benefit to work with someone who knows what they're doing with somatic therapy, because people have learned, over time, the types of movements that release this stored stress and energy. So that's what it is. Look it up. It's powerful.
Yeah.
Okay,
absolutely.
let's keep going. So you said magnesium. You said somatic therapy. These things were making a big difference for you, but it wasn't 100% yet. But you're winning. You're starting to win the battle, right?
Right.
So what came next?
So I started getting worse and not better over the course of about 6 years. And, I was getting more and more careful about the things that I was putting in my body, and I was taking all of the right supplements. I was seeing all the right doctors. I was doing all the right labs, and I still had all of these symptoms that were seemingly unrelated. And I'll just list them off in case any of these resonate with the listeners out there too. So I have currently still experiencing, but I'm working on it. I have chronic fatigue. I have brain fog. I've got chronic inflammatory response syndrome, also known as CIRS. I've got mast cell activation. Your mast cells in your body are immune cells. They're really, really good for fighting inflammation and infection. They're what cause swelling when you get a cut in part. But if you have something that's constantly triggering an immune response, then your mast cells are just overfiring all the time, and that can cause some health issues. So I have mast cell activation syndrome, I have the chronic fatigue, I have the brain fog. I feel like I'm 80 years old when I get up in the morning because I have such stiff joints and pretty major joint pain. My stomach has been all over the place despite cutting out all of the foods that are really bad for me. Still getting panic attacks, still having a constant sense of anxiety, and I'm just really, really low energy all the time, and I can't do all the things that I would normally love to do. I also have been getting an increase in my asthma. My exercise-induced asthma is a lot worse. In addition to this, I also have histamine intolerance. So I have really high levels of histamine. It's been tested in a lab, and your body actually produces histamine. It's really good for you because it's another immune response that helps your body to fight off things that it is allergic to or just like foreign substances in your body. That's why in the summertime, if you have seasonal allergies, you're sneezing or you're coughing or you have a runny nose, it's from the histamine in your body clearing out that allergen. So it's just trying to return your body to homeostasis. But if you have something chronic going on in your body, a lot of times you'll have a histamine intolerance where you just essentially have too much histamine in your body because your body is trying so hard to clear out whatever is going on in your body. So you've got a lot of histamine, got a lot of mast cell activation in your body. So your body is having this huge immune response to neuroinflammation and just general inflammation in your body. So what do all these symptoms add up to?
Trouble. Hey, I want to share a story because you were talking about histamines. May I tell the story about Vancouver Island and going to Wild Play?
Yeah, this was part of
our discovery
solution. So yeah, go ahead and tell it.
So we were up in Pacific Sands, and Lydia and her husband Matt and I decided to drive to Wild Play on the way to the ferry to go back to the mainland. And Wild Play used to be called Trigo or Mankato. It's had different names, but it's a high ropes course with zip lines and a lot of games 70 feet off the ground where you're trying to balance on crazy rolling logs way up in the air and all this kind of stuff. So Lydia loves this stuff, which, she's talking about panic attacks, and yet she wants to do this high rope zip line. It was 3 hours of being up in the tree canopies. But we're driving there, and Lydia's behind the wheel, and she wasn't worried about Wild Play. But just all of a sudden, she pulls over and stops. And I looked at her. I said, "What's going on?" She goes, "I feel like I'm having a heart attack." It was a panic attack. We didn't know why. And so I'm like, "Well, Lydia, if this is too much histamine, what would happen if you took an antihistamine?" And so Lydia took a Zyrtec, and Matt started driving so Lydia could just chillax. And guess what? The panic went away. And that's when we started to realize that this hyperhistamine response was triggering some of the panic challenges. And by the way, we got there, and Lydia did spend 3 hours at 70 feet in the air doing all these crazy zip lines and games and everything else, and she did very well. She overcame that panic. I can't tell you how impressive that is to me. When you think you're dying, you're having a heart attack, your body has shut down. It has gone into fight or flight to the point that you're totally dysfunctional. And Lydia pushes through, and an hour later, she's doing a high ropes course. That's why I say, folks, Lydia is so strong. But she's had to battle these things over and over again. So, Lydia, you found that your histamine response was a big part of this.
Yeah.
What else?
Yeah, so something that is really helping me for right now is taking Zyrtec and taking Pepcid. Both of those things together essentially take out all of the extra histamine in your body. Zyrtec is an H1 histamine blocker and Pepcid is an H2 histamine blocker. So they They get rid of the extra histamine in 2 different parts of your body, essentially in 2 different systems of your body. So taking those 2 things together is really, really good. But
once again, talk to a doctor.
Yep. Yeah, it was really, really good for me personally. This isn't medical advice. I'm just saying things that have worked. For all those people that are just trying to throw the kitchen sink at this, because I've seen a lot of people struggling with all of these weird random symptoms that I laid out that just seem to make no sense. And some people, even in addition to this, will have a lot of coughing or runny nose, or their eyes are watering, they're tearing up a lot of times for seemingly no reason.
So you found that taking antihistamines has been very helpful, and that was doctor recommended, by the way, for you, not for everybody else. For you, it's been helping. What other things are you exploring that you're finding some benefit from?
Yeah. So, I also wanted to mention for the ladies out there, a lot of times this seems to be coupled with estrogen dominance as well, which can lead to really bad PMS symptoms, or even PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is essentially just your premenstrual syndrome on steroids. It's just really, really bad, like in your luteal phase right before you hit your menstrual phase. So all that to say, if your body is going through some of these symptoms, maybe not all, maybe it's just a few of these symptoms, the answer is probably mold toxicity in your body.
Wait, mold?
Mold toxicity. So
okay, I have to point out that several people that are really big in the social media circles these days have been having mold toxicity challenges. Chris Williamson just came out with a full disclosure about his challenges with it. Jordan Peterson has been hospitalized. He's now at home still, I guess, recovering, but it's for months because of mold issues. You're saying that mold is causing your issues too?
Yeah, so all of these seemingly unrelated symptoms, they are all symptoms of mold toxicity. So about 25% of the US population lacks a gene in their body as part of their DNA that allows their body to detox mold. So you hit around 26, 27 years of age, and if you've been exposed to mold, like I did when I was in a moldy dorm room my freshman year of college, or in my brand new apartment that was built in 2017 that turns out there was mold in the HVAC system. So I was living there for like 6 months and I was constantly inhaling mold. My symptoms were getting worse and worse and worse, and I was getting more and more panic attacks, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. It was mold. I was inhaling mold. And I don't know this for sure, but I probably don't have that gene that allows me to detox mold naturally. Another hypothesis that I have for myself actually is I may have a latent virus that is also causing some issues with detoxing mold. So this is something that would be really, really good to talk to a functional medicine doctor about that specializes in allergies as well as immunology, because they can talk to you about mold. The other thing that is fascinating about this is a lot of times if you try to test for mold, if you have a lot of mold in your body that's been building up for years and years and years, you're going to get a test that comes back negative, because mold is both water soluble and fat soluble, meaning that it can actually go through your cellular membrane and it can impact every single aspect of every single cell in your body. And it can go into your brain and it can go into your heart and all of these different areas. So all that being said, if it's just deeply rooted within your body, if you've been struggling with detoxing mold for a lot of years, you'll try to take a test to see if you have mold in your body, and it'll come back negative, even though your body is filled with mold. So if you think that you might have mold and you want to do a test and you think that you've been exposed to it for a long time, you probably want to take some things that will mobilize the mold in your system for about a week and then get tested. Again, this isn't medical advice. This is just something that has helped some people. So obviously talk to your doctor about this, but taking things like NAC and taurine for a week or a couple of days can help mobilize that mold out of your various cells. And then you can take that test. Usually it's a urine test that you can take that will actually, you'll get a positive read for specific types of mold that are in your body to help just get rid of that out of your system. But if a urine test doesn't work, you can also do a blood test that shows essentially 2 different types of proteins that are in your blood there that show up when you have mold in your body, but you just can't tell the exact type of mold that's in your system from a blood test.
I want to just kind of highlight that mold is everywhere and it's not all bad. I like moldy cheese. It's so good. But there are some types of mold that create mycotoxins, and these mycotoxins, some people are really heavily impacted. They get sick.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Mycotoxins
other people
are a waste product of mold too. So that's the interesting thing about mycotoxins is they're not alive. It's just a waste product of mold that a lot of people react to.
Yeah, and it can be in the air. You know, it can be put out by mold that's living in your body. It could be in foods that you eat. There are a lot of foods that do have mold in them as they're processed. And if you're sensitive to the mycotoxins, or maybe you're struggling from SIRS or something like that, again, it's not medical advice. These are ideas for you to explore with your doctor. But foods that have mold in the process of making them might trigger you. And a lot of primary suspects are surprising. Coffee is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Black tea, another big one. And the reason is because they ferment these things as they process them, and that fermentation allows the mold to grow, and they grab some mycotoxins. And for most people, you have your coffee, it's no big deal, it's just coffee. But with people that have a sensitivity to this, it can trigger things like, how about a dry cough, a tickle in your lungs that lasts for a day if you have a cup of coffee? How many of you have experienced that? Or maybe you didn't know why your dry cough wouldn't go away. Try going a day without your coffee and see what happens.
Right.
So, I mean, these sorts of things are elusive and they seem really strange because it's like, coffee can't be causing my problems. You know, why would it be coffee? But it can be the mycotoxins that are in the foods, you know. Even breads, because of molds that can develop on the grains, you know. I mean, there's so many sources. It's not just your house necessarily, or where you work, or the environment you live in. You might have to put on your Sherlock hat and start sleuthing out what it is that's triggering your issues and what you can do about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And good news for those coffee lovers out there. They do make mold-free coffee that is third-party lab tested. So you can look up mold-free coffee that is third-party lab tested for mold and mycotoxins and even, you know, heavy metals and all the other crap that is in coffee, and you can get some really clean coffee. You just have to do a little bit more research and you might have to order your coffee.
Yeah, there are solutions in our modern world. It's a beautiful thing that our modern world has so many options. So you really can do a lot. We're very, very blessed to live in the time in which we live.
Absolutely. So now I'm at this point in my journey with mold where I figured out what it is. I figured out what's causing all of the inflammation and neuroinflammation in my body. And right now I am taking those antihistamines, the Pepcid and the Zyrtec, to help mitigate my histamine response, which is helping with the panic attacks a little bit. But that is a Band-Aid. And I've tried balancing out, you know, I have some hormone issues as well from all of this. So I've tried, you know, balancing out the estrogen dominance and things like that with bioidentical progesterone. But I really think that the answer here is to just get rid of the mold. And I'm still in the process of trying to figure out the best way to do that. But essentially, from all of the research that I've done, if you're able to have mobilized mold in your system and you do that lab test that I was talking about, that urine test, you'll be able to see what kinds of mold you have in your system. And from there, you'll be able to choose an appropriate binder for that type of mold, because some types of binders actually work better for specific types of mold. So like if you have ochratoxin A as a mold in your body, for instance, really good binder for that is activated charcoal. But if you have a different kind of mold in your body, then a better binder might be bentonite clay. And you can also buy some binders that are specific to detox that have multiple different kinds of binders in them. Like there's one that's called an ultra binder that has an activated charcoal as well as bentonite clay and a couple of other things in it as well. I'm not really sure what's best at this point for doing that. I do know that there are a lot of good antifungals out there. I don't know which one is going to be best for me yet. I'm still in the middle of this journey of figuring it out. I do know that I've had a functional medicine doctor recommend to me morinda, which is a fruit that grows in Hawaii. It's naturally an antifungal, so it's really good for antifungal properties. Also, something called undasolenic acid is a really good antifungal. NAC is a really good antifungal as well. The key here is that you want to take all of those things in the morning and then take your binders separately from that, because otherwise they're not going to absorb in your system. Binders absorb everything, so any vitamins or supplements that you want to take it separately from your binder. And again, this is not medical advice. I'm not telling you to go out and just take this stuff, because for me, I'm actually waiting on a lab report from my doctor, and I'm going to work with them to detox the mold properly from my body, because it is so deeply ingrained in my body that every time I've tried to detox it in the past, I've gotten so sick from it. Even, checking all the boxes and doing the detox thing the right way, quote unquote. So just make sure that you're working with a functional medicine doctor that knows what they're doing. And I will put some resources in the show notes. We'll put some resources in the show notes to just like for a database where you can find a functional medicine doctor that works specifically with this. And a lot of them do telehealth as well. So even if they're not in your state, you can have a Zoom call with them and they can just get you rolling on getting this stuff out of your system.
I want to highlight a couple of things, and I think maybe we can wrap this up. But the first thing is, Lydia has struggled with this from the time that she was an infant. Not mold necessarily, but sensitivities to various allergens. And her mom and I have worked very, very hard to sort out what causes it over the years, and Lydia's continued that journey. And it's like peeling back the layers of an onion. You find one thing that helps a little bit, but then you find there's another layer you have to address. And I just want to encourage anyone who's out there with similar sorts of a story that there is hope and you can still have an adventurous, healthy lifestyle. And it's probably well worth the effort to find out what's going on and find the solutions. And I've watched Lydia go, what's wrong with me? I'm having panic attacks. I'm not sure if I'm functioning well. I've watched her go from that mindset to, I'm sorting this out and overcoming this, and soon it's going to be behind me. And it's just such a beautiful shift from despair to hope. And that's the reason why I wanted to have Lydia come on today, because there are others of you out there that need that shift from despair to hope. And Lydia, you just made an email address so people could contact you if they just have questions. Not that you won't give medical advice, but you can say, well, here's some resources that I've looked into that I've learned some things from. And that address is lydiashealthideas@gmail.com. So we'll put that in the show notes too. But again, that's lydiashealthideas@gmail. And Lydia is spelled Lydia. So lydiashealthideas@gmail.com. Lydia, what do you want to add?
Well, I wanted to add that I one symptom that I forgot to mention is something called post-exertional malaise, which I think a lot of you adventurers might have if you have a lot of these other symptoms. And that's essentially where you feel like you have the flu after you work out. That is most likely due to your body working to detox the mold from your body while it's just working out and exerting itself, because when we exercise, our body goes into detox mode. So if you're also struggling with that, I just wanted to give you some hope with that there's a fix for that as well, that isn't, a pharmaceutical. If you're not into that kind of thing, you can fix it with just fixing what may be the root cause, which may be mold.
And it could be too much beer too.
It could be too much beer too. Yeah. But I just wanted to say, for anybody out there that is struggling with these health issues, I see you. And I think that you're amazing for getting up in the morning and just fighting the good fight and carrying on with your life despite having all of these issues, because it is so hard. And it is also so hard to go to so many doctors and for them to not fully believe all of the symptoms that you're going through, or they might think that you're a hypochondriac, or they, you say, hey, I think this might be mold, and they laugh in your face. And they say, no, it's definitely not mold. Mold isn't that dangerous. It's not bad for you. So I just want to say that if you have that experience and you're just dealing with the mental load of trying to figure all of this out in addition to the chronic health issues, you are a warrior. You are doing an amazing thing, and I am so proud of you. And if you have any questions about my journey or things that have worked for me that you can talk to your doctor about, just send me an email. I'd be more than happy to just, set up a conversation with you, or just email back and forth and we can get to the bottom of it together.
Okay. Well, Lydia, thank you so much for being so open and sharing with us. And I think that this can provide hope, not, like I said in the beginning, not only for people that love adventure and are struggling with it, but for people who know people who can't adventure because of these challenges. There is hope, and I encourage everyone, continue to exercise. Get out there, have the fun, live a balanced, healthy life, enjoy the community, the healing that nature brings, the strength that comes from exercise, the fortitude that comes from challenges. All of this stuff is what the Adventure Sports Podcast is about. And if you're struggling with some of the symptoms that Lydia described, there is hope. Don't think, oh, it's just me, I'm weak. That's not true. That's not true. You'll be as strong as you want to be. You just might have to put the work in to do it. So, Lydia, thank you very much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Dad.
You bet. And I really appreciate your vulnerability in being this candid with the audience. I think it's going to make a huge impact. So, everyone out there, until the next show, get out there and have some fun.